Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm recording from Bloomington. With unidentified masked stormtroopers hunting people in their workplaces, churches, and even schools, elected officials arrested, assaulted, and threatened with medieval torture, United States Marines deployed on American streets. The most alarmist sky is falling, Trump derangement syndrome infected doomsayers are being proven right. But it's not exactly cause for spiking the football and screaming, "Told you so!" This fascistic escalation by the regime is causing real, demonstrable harm to individuals, families, and communities. This is no time to gloat. Even those who may have previously supported MAGA can feel that things just aren't right. Our time of crisis calls for bridging divides, for empathy, for meeting each other at a human level. My guests today have put together a campaign offering a common theme and simple framework to help build a collective sense of solidarity and unity in the everyday activities and events of an Indiana summer. Debbie Asberry of Hoosiers for Democracy, Amy Courtney from Mad Voters, and Michelle Higgs of Indiana Rural Summit have organized Summer of Solidarity, a people-powered movement built around a simple idea. When democracy is in danger, we respond together. They join me for a conversation about building a movement founded on person-to-person conversations, compassion, and common ground. We'll talk about the importance of symbolism, storytelling, and trust in creating coalitions. First, please consider supporting Who's Left with a paid subscription. This is an independent media project. I don't paywall content, and I don't rely on advertising. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. Maybe I could make more money if I did things differently, but I am a terrible capitalist. So please, if you find value in this work, go to whosleft.us and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help me write more, research more, and organize more. Still, not ready for a long-term commitment? You can make a one-time contribution on Cash App or Venmo. Links are in the show notes. Me and my old body would like to spend less time on construction and more time constructing a better future for Indiana, but I need your financial support to do so. You can also help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding articles to your people. We are building a community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok at Who's Left, and I'm personally at ScottRodge78 on Instagram, Threads, Twitter, and Mastodon. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Thanks again. Now, here are Debbie Asberry, Amy Courtney, and Michelle Higgs. All right. Hey, there we are. Michelle Higgs, Amy Courtney, and Debbie Asberry. Welcome to the Who's Left podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for having us. Absolutely.
So, ladies, we've got big stuff planned for this summer, yeah?
We hope so.
I don't know where we want to start. Who wants to tell me about your Summer of Solidarity project? I'm really excited to hear about this and participate in this. Who wants to go ahead and begin? And I will turn the floor over to you.
I think, Debbie, you should start because you were leading around democracy, and that's
All right.
Yep.
Scott, I have been, Hoosiers for Democracy is basically a Substack that I launched 2 years ago with a couple of other amazing women. And we were deeply concerned about traditional advocacy and the ways in which folks who had to rely, being a nonpartisan organization, how they had to just tiptoe around what was happening with the backsliding democracy because you can't call out candidates or be partial to a particular party, right? So we launched Hoosiers for Democracy as sort of an alternative form of advocacy, where we would gently call out the other party, but not in a hyper partisan way, And our mission was twofold. It was to educate voters in about the extremism that had taken hold of Indiana prior to the 2024 election, just to try to fill some of the gap of misinformation and disinformation. And in my background as a social systems and human systems consultant, I wanted to really help be a part of what I sensed was a growing movement of anti-extremism and pro-democracy. And so that's sort of who Hoosiers for Democracy is. And so we've been in and out of the advocacy work since we launched it in 2023. It took us a year to figure out what was our niche. We did a deep dive into what already existed in Indiana. I met Michelle. We met the Donor Roundtable. I'm very familiar with folks who helped co-launch that. And we decided the niche was information to voters. But then after the election happened in 2024, what I was seeing was lots of really good things, the empty chair town halls and the rallies that began starting in like in February and the boycotts. I saw these different things happening, but my concern was that they felt fragmented. And it's like, how can we support one another without forming this monolith sort of umbrella organization? How is it we can begin to build sort of a self-organizing, shape-shifting network where we all are connected in very soft and subtle ways? We sort of know what one another's doing, we support one another, and sort of be in this network building of supporting the pro-democracy movement. And I've just been in conversations really since January, talking with different stakeholders, saying, "Is it possible? What do you think?" But the conversation sort of bogs down into, well, how do we create a structure? It's like, well, it's not exactly a structure. But when I finally, about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, I said, "Michelle, help me. I'm not having much luck with this conversation. What am I asking? What am I doing that's wrong? Amy, help me here," because she's very much a part of the ecosystem we operate in here. And we just started having a conversation, and literally it was like magic. And Michelle pulled in a couple of her folks her colleagues. And over the course of 3 Zoom calls, literally 3 Zoom calls, we launched this campaign. No one owns it. We're very clear. No one of us own it. And yet we need to connect as many dots as we can across this ecosystem, the state of Indiana. And so that's sort of what our mission was, and we launched it that way. And I'll turn it over to a couple other folks. But honest to Pete, it was just finding the right people, getting us together around the right Zoom, and just sort of being deep listeners to one another and sort of being creative. And it was literally like magic to get to a point that you raised earlier before we went live, talking about solidarity when we're so divided right now in our politics, and
Yeah.
there's sort of urban Indiana and rural Indiana, right? And there's very different mindsets in the urban rural divide, and all the good work that Ruby's done around that. And my earphones keep falling out. So what one of the folks from Michelle's colleague group talked about, because we were talking about democracy Indiana, uh, democracy summer, and she said that won't fly. That won't fly in rural Indiana. She said it's just not going to fly. We sort of talked about why it would and wouldn't, and it's like great. And that's when we came up with this idea of solidarity, summer of solidarity, and that's our mission: is just to create connections across diverse perspectives during this and very important summer that we think is going to unfold over the course of the next several weeks. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to sort of build on that.
Yeah, and I'm going to sort of help, bridge and then turn it over to one of your colleagues here. But you make a really good point that um, so many people after the election, and going into the new year and the inauguration, and then as all of the fire hose of stuff keeps coming from Washington. So many people they're like, I want to do something. I need to do something, and don't know where to begin. And there's so many different organizations, and I feel like a lot of folks are like, boy, I don't know where to begin. And maybe they'll start their own thing, or they'll catch a friend who's got sort of a thing going on. But it is a very there's very much a diaspora of folks who want to be involved in pro democracy efforts, and yet you also bring up the importance of independence, like from the Democratic Party. You know, there's a branding issue. It might be hard to
Right.
bring in folks who are loyal to the Republican brand, even though they might see things that are wrong. And the democracy itself, right? It sounds like it has a branding problem.
Right.
Um, so, Michelle, why is solidarity the word that you landed on?
Um, Again, I think it's when we were talking to other people who predominantly are in the rural and small town communities. I think democracy can sometimes be such a big, broad term. And it's also been co-opted. So the number of times that we're talking to people and we'd say democracy and they would come back with we're a republic, right? And and so you're hitting this narrative that has they've been steeped in for quite some time, not realizing that they're losing all of their rights. And I even want to name, ironically enough, that in our most rural communities, we pretty much have single party um, elections at that point, right? There's
Yeah, yeah,
nothing contested, and so yet that is where democracy, true democracy, like how many votes somebody actually gets wins, right? It isn't about having an electoral college, for example. This is where, people can win by 10 votes, by 2 votes.
yeah,
And yet they are with their own mouth saying, well, we're not a democracy. And it almost gives them this space of you've just reduced your own power as people, we the people. And so it makes it really difficult when you are trying to engage people to actually get involved in politics. And so you have one group that maybe is like, I don't watch the news, I don't care about any of that. Sometimes it is literally they're doing 2 and 3, 4 jobs, trying
mm,
to make ends meet, and they don't have time, and they just cannot handle it. And then there's others for whom what are their media options where they're at? We don't have papers in so many places, and
right,
if they don't have, access to cable TV, what news are they getting? Um, and so that makes a big difference, and part of the reason why, I founded the Indiana Rural Summit was because we were finding that so many races were not contested, and so there was no reason for anybody to go even to think like their vote matters. We're 50th in voter turnout, um, and it's really hard then to get anything changed. So when you see all of these organizations and they will go up to the state house and they will advocate for policy change, and then you hear back going, the only thing that's going to change um, is money and votes, money and votes.
yeah,
And so you keep coming back to that place, and yet we haven't bridged the conversations. So I see all these organizations working and working and sometimes in parallel. But what's not really happening is the mobilization of the members of those organizations as fully engaged agents of change themselves. So, like, I can be a
yeah,
member of multiple groups that have different focuses. Very rarely would I be asked, "Hey, are you cross-pollinating? Are you bringing this idea to that? Are you getting trained as a leader in this space to then be a leader in that space, and what does that look like?" And more importantly, if you are in a county where the county party is Democratic Party may be struggling to even get people to show up, but you've got values aligned organizations, and yet those members don't see themselves as being valuable to actually be involved with that party or anything like that. That's a problem. And I think where we've ended up, and I would even say this in about the Republican Party, is people don't see themselves in either party right now. So many people are more independent
mm,
voters, they don't see themselves in that space. And so now we've got just some polarizations and divisions. And the whole point with solidarity is at the end of the day, we are Americans and we are Hoosiers. And we have to come back to remembering who we are and why it matters. And so I think, yeah, that's kind of to me the purpose of solidarity really is to start building our mycelium network is what I call it.
Like mycelium, like mushrooms, right? Is
Mhm.
that like the underground, and
Under
like these organisms can span like acres and acres and acres, right? That
Yeah.
okay, that's neat. I like that.
and the mushrooms can help the trees and help communicate with the trees, right? And so there is a solidarity ecosystem in the natural world that we need to learn how to emulate, right? Yeah, so it's a
Yeah.
beautiful metaphor.
So, Amy, you're with Mad Voters, and you guys primarily do things in the information space, right? Like so much of Indiana, especially, and a lot of red states, is that um, just a lot of Middle America in general is not well served by the media. And you folks have done an incredible job just talking about what the state house is doing, the real life effects of laws that are passed in Indianapolis, but so much of the the narrative, the just the this information warfare, the polarization is less to do with like access to good information and more to do with just raw emotion, you
Mhm.
know? Um, how do you think that having that information and having all of the deep analysis that you folks do um can break through some of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think really in this moment and when it comes to democracy and waking up to what's happening, the fact that we are absolutely in the middle of an authoritarian coup in the United States and a fascist takeover. And there's a spectrum where people are. Some people are not aware that that's happening. And in fact, are in a different reality and seem to think something else is happening. And,
Mhm.
then there are people that, think both parties suck. Neither party's doing anything for me. I don't care. And then you start to have people that are like, maybe trying to get information from different places, but they are, um, not sure what's true or not really sure what's going on, but they just feel like something is wrong, right? And then there's the point when you actually kind of wake up, if you want to use that term, and
Yeah.
you realize what's happening. And that can be a really dark and scary place and it can be overwhelming. Um, and then, from there, I think most people they seek out more and more information at that point. So,
Yeah.
and then from there, moving to actually taking actions, and not just learning about what's happening and learning about the government, but starting to use their voice, whether it's at the state house or working on campaigns or whatever it may be. So thinking about that, kind of broad spectrum of where people are at. Look, if facts and figures worked, we'd already be winning. Like the
Yeah.
facts are on our side, right? So you're exactly right. You have to connect on that emotional level first. And that's really one of the things that we're trying to do
Yep.
with this whole concept of summer of solidarity is talk to your neighbors. And, maybe that conversation isn't even political. We've got to start somewhere. And there's certainly people that probably not going to be having conversations with. They're just probably not receptive at this point. But everyone else, there's somewhere on that spectrum. And so,
Mhm.
a lot of what we need to do is to have conversations and ask questions and listen and really listen to understand, not to turn around and get your facts and data out there, but to really understand where they're coming from in that perspective and to validate those feelings that they're having. And so, I think there's a place for that information, and I agree. Mad Voters does an amazing job of getting that information out there on the issues and really following like what the state house is doing. There's a time and a place, but people have to be ready for it. And so,
Yeah.
Yep.
we can scream from the rooftops, but if people aren't ready to hear it, it's not gonna connect with them. And so, like what we're seeing, there's a lot of work to be done in this state, and starting back in those kind of earlier stages of just having conversations, building community. So even if you don't even talk politics this summer, but you build community and you have conversations with people that are in your neighborhood that you haven't talked to before, that's success, and that's moving us forward. So the idea is, absolutely no one is coming to save us. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We have to be the heroes we need right now. And it's very much the people and those connections, and building solidarity across lots of different groups, lots of different people who aren't going to agree on everything, except what's happening right now is wrong, and people are hurting, and we deserve something better.
Yeah. And the service Mad Voters provides, you guys provide that factual backbone that you have to come back on.
Right.
But what you said is like super important, because you're not gonna change people's minds by spitting facts at them and proselytizing or you know coming at them with that nerd stuff, right? It's
Mhm.
visceral. It's
Right.
when the authoritarianism, when the Medicaid cuts, when the tariffs, when that stuff hits you in
Mhm.
your home, in your pocket, at your kitchen table, um, that's when it matters. And it's hard, I think, for some of us who have seen this coming, who have been warning about this for longest time. We're like, "What?" But that's human nature, right? In many ways, is you don't see these things until they affect you personally, and
Yep.
we have to hold space, I think, for those folks. In many ways, I think the problem with the general left and the Democratic Party in particular over the last several years is we come off like scolds. Like,
Yep.
well, we have all this facts, we have these data, we know what's going on. Like, why don't you see this? Well, because it hasn't affected my life directly. Most people are struggling. Most people are just trying to get by. Maybe we're working two, three, four jobs just to make ends meet. We're the weirdos here that
Right.
that follow this stuff religiously. Most people don't know until it hits them. So you
Right.
said we have to listen with empathy and and bring them in, right?
Absolutely. And, I'll make the point. Mad Voters actually formed in 2022. And it was a group of women mothers actually, who met during SB1 and the abortion ban.
Yeah.
So even for Mad Voters, where that how we formed was, it was affecting us, right? Like we were moved to
Mhm.
take action because it was affecting us. And then the organization formed out of that, which is great. But like when you go back to it, people don't really wake up to this until they're feeling it. That is real. And we need to acknowledge that. And there's no amount of, you know, for example, like we all have MAGA family. My mom's MAGA. It happens, right? Um, and one of the things to remember is like we are all humans, and
Yeah.
it can be extremely difficult. But to have empathy, to the extent that you can, that so many people have been the victim of psychological warfare,
Yes.
propaganda. This has been a very targeted campaign. They haven't been exposed to anything other than this right wing extremist echo chamber. And so I think it's just really important to keep that in mind. Um, and unfortunately, because we did go off the cliff and we are where we are, things are going to continue to get worse. And more people are going to feel, oh my gosh, this is affecting me. And so, they may have been MAGA yesterday, but
Yeah.
then, one of their, loved ones was, taken by ICE, or they're, potentially, scared of actually dying because they may lose their Medicaid coverage. Um, and it's really important to have empathy and to have space for everyone, because it is 100% the people together who need to fight back against what's happening. There's no political party that's going to save us. There's no organization. There's no, even it'd be nice to have some leaders, yeah, but that's not going to do it. It's the movement, it's the people that are going to have to do it.
There's a lot of inclination, I think, um, on our side of the aisle, if you want to break it down into like strictly partisan terms, that are like, oh well, oh, you fucked around and found out, didn't you? And you want to rub people's face in it, and that might feel good in the moment,
Yeah.
but that does not help our cause in the long run at all,
No. No.
because this is still a democracy, and yeah, we like it is a zero sum game. We need votes, we need people's votes, and if you are hurt by these MAGA policies, we maybe don't want to like absorb your foundational ideas into our worldview, but like we welcome your vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so important, Scott, and what Amy's talking about, and it's something that the four of us have talked a lot about. We are connecting at our basic humanity, right? And really going back to the old fashioned idea of listening, as Amy said, listening to understand, not to interrupt, and get your point into the conversation, and creating a sense of connection and belonging. Because what we know, the geeks that we all are around this table, is that I will be influenced 10 times more effectively if I hear something from someone I trust. So if I'm just sharing peach crisp cobbler recipes today with my MAGA voter, and we're connecting with lemonade and growing sunflowers, and I'm subversive because the sunflower is one of the symbols that we're using, which is an emblem, a symbol of resistance and solidarity. And I'm going to plant them in her freaking side yard that we butt up against, right? But when I come to her 6 months from now, because her brown mixed race adopted son is terrorized by going back to school and the checkpoints that may be set up even here, I'm hyperbole, but that kind of thing, I can say that has to be terrifying. And I too am worried about whatever it is. So again, you're connecting and not convincing or persuading. And then 6 months later, when we are really into election 2026, and I want to talk to her about a candidate that I have a sign in my yard with, I can say, because of what we talked about last summer, I really think this person is going to help protect our kids. We know that kind of relationship can change a vote. Not each of us having a yard sign fight, right? And sort of this and that back and forth. And that is the subversiveness of the solidarity, summer of solidarity. It's through metaphor and image and old fashioned conversations at city markets, the rural fairs, and then it's an old fashioned way of making connections.
But I do want to piggyback a
But
little
yeah,
bit
go
on
ahead.
what she's saying
Yeah.
with the sunflowers. So, for example,
Back.
all of us have had moments where maybe we bought a type of car, or I know as women, you get pregnant and you find somebody else who's pregnant. Like all of a sudden you see pregnant people everywhere, right? Or you have your Honda and now you see Hondas everywhere. There is something about when you're told, okay, this symbol, and we're going to go back to like World War II, we used the white rose. Um, the sunflower, obviously for Indiana, but it's also solidarity with Ukraine and what they're doing. So
Mhm.
it's like it connects a lot of different things. And right now, it might be where I was at Olive Garden the other day and I saw their display and they had sunflowers in it. So I took a picture and I sent it to them. I'm like, "Oh, found in the wild, SOS 2025," all of this. And and the thing is Olive Garden participating? No, it would be great if they did, but they're not. But that symbol to me reminded me of a higher purpose of what we're doing. It gave me hope and an uplift in a moment where the news can be so pulling down. And then the idea of there's a lot of old campaign signs, yard signs, right? And so we're going to go and pick up a bunch of them. We're going to whitewash them and then put sunflowers on them, and then people can take those and put them out at the front of their yards. So imagine you are in a kind of what we call the red and rural parts of Indiana, but you're driving along and there's a sunflower here and a sunflower there and a sunflower there. All of a sudden, you realize I'm not alone. And the people that are wanting to embrace this thing of, I don't want to fight and have division. I don't want my kids and my grandkids to grow up in an Indiana where they're afraid of their neighbor, or and they're worried about where their next meal could come from, or if their kids can even live here, because is there going to be housing for them available that's affordable? Like, there's so many layers to this. And I think at the end of the day, if we actually have those conversations, we're going to find that we align so much on what we actually truly value. And how we get there might be different, right? Like, I might disagree on maybe certain priorities to somebody, but I can certainly say I think our water needs to be clean and that we don't, get sick from it, or that our food is healthy. And the other thing I feel like too is we've forgotten our own history and our own stories of solidarity throughout time, and the people that have made this meaningful, and just even with Indiana, like, we've lost who Eugene Debs is, right? And so, like,
Yeah.
here we have a state that's the right to work, and yet we've completely lost the value of what unions have brought, as everybody is celebrating going out on a weekend with their boat, or going whatever it might be. How do we do that? How do we lose our story? And I think we have to get that back, and it starts with conversations with people.
I like the metaphor. You find this sunflower like out in the wild, like in Olive Garden, like the least likely place that you're gonna find it. But it reminds you of kind of all of our shared humanity, if you look
Right.
at it like that. And um most of us, I think, in the end, do share the same values on most things. It's just those few areas where we disagree. Those who are powerful like us to focus on those issues because it suits them. Um, I'm thinking about these protests going on in Los Angeles right now. And Michelle, you lived in Los Angeles for a long time. The actual area in LA, which is a huge county, the actual area where these protests are affecting are, a few square blocks. But if you only focus on that, all you see is the conflict and not like everything else in all of its beauty. And I really think that's kind of a microcosm of the our whole situation right now.
Absolutely. And just for context, I believe, I might be off by a few, but I believe it's like 428 square miles, something like that. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah, and like millions of people live in Los Angeles County, like more than live in Indiana
yeah.
and many other states for that matter.
So,
Debbie, I
and
saw you had a yeah,
yeah.
you seemed like you wanted to say something.
Well, to build on what Michelle was saying, is it's that the authoritarians are going to, it is their strategy to make us believe that we are disconnected and alone. And so again, the work that we're doing in Summer Solidarity is steeped in geeky theory, but you don't sell the theory, right? You live it. And so that we know that what they're trying to do is to break those horizontal connections. And we're saying, no, we're going to mend those connections back. Because at the end of the day, that is what's going to build the movement. And so there really is a strategy underneath the metaphors, underneath the symbolism, underneath the different fun things that we'll be doing and inviting people to do. And we have engaged multiple partners who are really excited about this 50501, Indivisible, League of Women Voters. I can't remember some of the other groups that we've been talking with. And what we're not saying, here's what you do and here's an event. We're saying we're going to give you some really cool logos and graphics. We're going to give you some ideas about what to do, and then you build it yourself. But let's just stay connected through image, through message, and through connections. And we're going to create some resources too, as Amy was talking about, of how to engage in conversation on this continuum. If your neighbor is over here completely checked out, mad voters, facts and figures won't make a bit of difference, right? But there is a way to engage that person, but most people don't know that. And so what would be how do you enter into that conversation? So we'll be providing some resources as well. So.
And I also want to
So,
name, we're entering with these budget cuts. We are entering it, after July, I think some things are going to start to hit, right? And it becomes a mutual aid thing. Like literally, how are you doing as a neighbor? And I think we've forgotten that because our rugged individualism really, we've been so isolated in that. And I use it as an example, how many people move to an area and then they buy their own lawnmower, riding lawnmower, right? Now,
mhm,
going back to Los Angeles, people didn't do that. You hired somebody who came and they did the whole neighborhood's lawns or whatever, right? You come here and everybody gets all of their own tools. And that's perfectly fine, but there's sometimes where you're going, why don't they just pull resources and get everybody's lawn to like it's an interesting thing because then I started to go, actually, when it comes to snow plows, we don't
yeah,
get enough snow to warrant a snow plow. However, there are times where you're out there trying to get your snow plow started or whatnot, and you feel really kind of stupid. Like, I should know how to do this. But it's like, it doesn't snow enough for me to know how to do this. And those are the elements where it's like, oh, I'm not from here. Anything that
mhm,
makes you feel like you're not from a place. Well, as more and more people are being uprooted from where their families and their grew up, and now they're all having to go to find jobs, find housing that's affordable. We're starting to see a more transient population that has actually been very familiar in other states, but maybe not so much in Indiana. But now it's
yeah,
starting to feel like that. And whenever you have that, it's so much easier to divide people because you get a bit of stranger danger. You go, well, you're not really here, or you're not committed to the place that we are. And I think part of this summer of solidarity is we need to go back to maybe even things that COVID disrupted. It's like having
yeah.
picnics and community events and things that are very low point of entry of just that gentle welcoming and who's your hospitality. Yeah.
So, well, Debbie said, this isn't like a top-down coordinated thing, but are there events planned to do things like that? To go, get out and talk to your neighbor about whatever. Maybe it's not politics. Are there currently events planned around the Summer of Solidarity where maybe the larger organization sort of have satellite things going on, and then maybe like other regional partners or local organizations will have their own sort of thing.
There are a couple things. What we were thinking, we don't have the bandwidth to be large event planners. So we're
Mm.
trying to be very mindful of our resources. But there are two historical occurring events that we're going to invite the larger organizations who have more bandwidth than we do. It's July 4th and Constitution Day. Because Constitution Day, praise God, falls within the summer season, right? It's like a week before fall comes. And so we're going to suggest to our colleagues and partners in this to really claim July 4th as our story, our history. I forget the three things. It's our country, our story, our history. And then let them do that whatever way that they want, but to really use that day as a big event day across the state that can be hosted by different groups and different people. But we'll provide resources around how to sort of support that theme and support that. And then on Constitution Day, which we have more time to plan, we really want to do a massive sort of it's Constitution Day and here's what it means, and be able to pass out constitutions and talk about that and have some really fun events. Of course, ACLU will be our prime partner, but other partners as well. So we haven't had the chance yet to really build those events, but that's sort of on our radar screen. And then beyond that, just some really good examples about how to have a movie night or host a book club or to have a barbecue where we give tools and resources for people to make those human connections and connect human to human. So it's much more organic kind of events
Yeah.
that we're going to be resourcing people with, but not hosting or coordinating or sponsoring ourselves.
The events you mention, the 4th of July, the flag, um, then the Constitution, these are symbols that the right has largely co-opted. Like they own the flag and they own the Constitution, even though, my God, the things they are doing currently are the most un-American stuff you can imaginable. Yet somehow, that's their brand. Um, I, as a leftist internationalist, am wary of symbols of nationalism. Um, lots of flags makes me uncomfortable, but I see the point. Did anybody else have that worry?
I was thinking about that before we started recording, actually. So like I think back to Nicole Hannah Jones and the 1619 Project and talking about her father, despite all the hardship that he experienced as a Black man in this country, he made sure that that flag was flying outside their house every day, and just the importance of that symbol. And it's not necessarily what, let's say, America is, but it's what we can be, and
Yeah.
it's those ideals that we were founded on that we haven't really lived up to, and it is holding this country responsible and accountable to achieve those ideals. And the only way that we're going to be able to get there is if we work together and we build that. So I sometimes, am unsure when I see a flag. Okay, is that really just a stand-in for MAGA, or are they really it? But at some point, we've got to get over it. It is the flag of this country. It is, unifying, and we can reclaim it, not to represent what they do, but to represent that, the greater ideals and what we could really be as a nation if we really lived up to, all men, all people are created equal, and everything that all of our founding documents talk about.
So much, I think, of where we have a problem as a country and seeing each other and talking to each other is, um, both of those things are there at once. The
Right.
good and it's like the yin and yang of America, right? There is the good and the bad, and they have always coexisted alongside each other. And there's been bad within the good, and there's been good within the bad. It's crazy how it all works, but so much I think is just about being honest about that.
Right.
And we have a hard time having that discussion because it's a hard discussion, and we all love America, and some of us are just like intensely disappointed in her, and others ride or die. Even when we are at our worst, some folks are just like 10 toes down, America, woo, right? How do we begin to have that discussion, Michelle?
So it's interesting you say that because I listened to an interview with Trevor Noah, who used to be with the Daily Show, host of the Daily Show.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was very fascinating because he was talking about how the United States is the only country in the world that actually has a belief in the pursuit of happiness. And I had to sit and listen to that for a moment. I'm like, that is a beautiful, beautiful thing when you look at the totality of human history and how much we have had this default lens of pain and suffering or misery or whatever, like this is, even again back to that rugged individualism of, well, I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps, or nobody gave me anything and I was miserable. And it's like I don't want to minimize somebody's unique struggle and what they did and what they achieved, but somehow we've kind of given ourselves trophies around, suffering versus this was my vision of pursuing happiness. And actually, the whole entrepreneurial spirit is rooted in a pursuit of happiness. And so today was the first day where I actually was getting decorations because we're going to have a booth. I say a booth. It's a table over in Bloomington during No King's Day because we're having a resource fair as well. And so they asked, "Hey, would organizing Indiana and Rural Summit do we want to put together a Summer of Solidarity booth?" And I'm like, "Oh heck yes, yes we do." So I'm buying flags, I'm buying sunflowers. I haven't felt creative like that such a long time. And even when we were talking about how do we want to reframe and envision the 4th of July, again, as so much of the rhetoric and the angst and the division has increased, you start to pull away and go, well, I don't feel like I want to celebrate this right now. But this first year, there's something about maybe the flag by itself to many people might feel MAGA, but what if you put a flag and a sunflower together? What
yeah,
changes for you so that you feel like that's the thing I'm leaning towards. That's the thing I want to carry. And again, it comes back to that feeling everybody has. Many of us have forgotten it. Many of us have been told that it doesn't exist anymore, or that
yep,
the only way we will get there is through violence. And I feel so strongly that that does not have to be our story. And it comes from sometimes the simple things. As a matter of fact, the font that we use, if you go to the Organizing Indiana website, which is organizingindiana.org, the font that we use for the logo is actually something that's from like a Lord of the Rings kind of thing,
Oh.
mm,
right? And we were thinking just about this moment, and here we have, I'm going to name it, like here we have billionaires that have named parts of their companies and things that they are doing that are heinous under tokenism phrases, right? So what is it? Palantir is something,
military, yeah, yeah,
and mithril coins and all of these things, right? Um, and I keep thinking back to there's something in Lord of the Rings where Gandalf's talking about the hobbits, and it's like nobody thinks about the hobbits because they're small and they're simple and they don't chase the fame and the glory and the ego. And that's a heart posture that I really feel like this moment we're gonna go from no kings, which feels very much we're gonna put sand in the gears, we're gonna stop some things, we're gonna do that, into something that's different. It's and again, going back to that mycelium, nobody sees what's happening as we are making those tendrils and getting deeply rooted and deeply connected. But our goal, our hope is that when we need to all rise in whatever way, that we do. And just like in spring, you were going around going, "Well, I don't see anything. Everything seems kind of brown or
Yeah.
whatever." And boom, there's the color, there's the life. And it's been there all along. We just haven't seen it.
Michelle, that's so important. That's another beautiful metaphor about spreading underground and these connections and taking root. I was listening to a couple of personalities that I really trust and enjoy earlier, and they were sort of talking about the same thing. Um, you know, if you think about trees in hurricane-prone areas, right?
Mhm.
They don't steel themselves and stiffen themselves and make themselves hard and impenetrable in the face of the wind. They actually learn how to bend. They root. They grow their roots deep and hold on to what matters, right? So they can bend in the storm, as opposed to you stiffen up, you toughen up. That's how you get split in half, right?
Right.
It is so much about the interconnectedness and the rootedness.
Yep. And the other thing that
Um,
we
yeah,
know the other thing we know is that time and time again, when there is a natural disaster, and Indiana is beautifully as an example of this, if there is a tornado or a flood, any kind of a natural disaster, or even snow drifts. I grew up in Henry County, and you're snowed in for 3 weeks, right? Because the snowplows don't get to you. People come together to help one another out, and we are at our best when we share our shared humanity, and we are helping one another out in times of difficulty. And we know that those times are coming. And so that's when we don't say, "I told you so." Find out moments, right? It's not the Freudenschau, that was Schadenfreude, the German word for that. But it's like, yeah, we're in this together. We are all in this together, and we're going to make it through this together. But that doesn't just happen in a political sense. That doesn't just happen automatically. And so we're really trying to build those connections, those one-on-one conversations, that sense of belonging and connection as a community, knowing that over time, and again, it gets back to the natural ecosystem, nothing happens overnight. It's over time. I want my impatiens to be beautiful like they are in August, and right now they look a little puny because I just got them in the face last week, right? So it's over time, and we're really hoping that over time, over the summer, we can begin to build that. But our strategy also is very much an electoral and political strategy, because what we're hoping is that next summer it's Freedom Summer, building on the 1964 movement of pro-democracy and the civil rights movement, so that we can go from a civic engagement and a community connection to building some more sort of electoral power, where people begin to think, well, maybe I will register to vote, or maybe I do need to pay attention, but build that over time, so that we don't start that the day after Labor Day of election year, that we would have been doing that 18 months ahead of time. So we really, another part of our strategy that we don't say out loud, is moving from the civic engagement to the electoral power, civic power, electoral power, to get to political power, which is the only way we're going to change policy.
yeah.
And so there is an underground, if you will, sort of strategy that we're using, our partners will help with this way more than what we'll be able to do individually. But that is also our deepest hope, is that we move on that continuum.
And when we're saying underground, we're not talking about like subversive. It's just person to person, human to human, one connection at a time, in a way, in an expressly sort of non-political way.
Mhm.
We do that next summer. Right now, it's about making connections, you know, g- giving people the the ladder out of the rabbit hole, if you will. Like, I'm here, I see you, we are humans. If you want to connect, if things get rough, I'm here. But not hitting them over the head with the electoral stuff this year. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. I keep going back to next year is going to be what, the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah,
Um,
big birthday.
and 2026 election, season will be in full swing. So next year is going to be pretty intense, right? So this year in Indiana, we don't have an election. So this year it's like, okay, we got to build that network. We got to get momentum for this movement. And then, moving into next year, we can start to, you know, apply that to, voting and elections and campaigns. But right now, this summer, it's about conversations. It's about community building. Maybe starting to do some collective action. Like we've started to see. But really, it's connecting in that solidarity and moving into next year. So it's a lot of building that foundation this year.
I also want to name that, we haven't really talked much about social media and stuff, but really it's an invitation for people to, how are they showing up in their communities? What are they doing? How are they expressing, sunflowers and flags and solidarity? And we even talked about it's like you could have people that are painting the side of their barn or their fence with something and then sharing that across social media. And there's something powerful as again, I want to go back to we could have 5,000 people show up in Indianapolis and do a thing, and that's powerful. But what if we had 100 people in all 92 counties,
Right.
right? There's something about seeing it again blanketed all across the state. We're all starting to move in a certain and same direction, and then also from a national perspective. So one of my biggest frustrations was that when I had left Indiana and lived in LA, everybody go, "Oh, well, you're from Indiana. What do they do there? Grow corn all day?" And I'm like, "Well, some places do. Sometimes it's soybeans, but and,
Right, that's the
but the
joke.
thing is, I would find in myself this kind of anger too, because it was this kind of dismissal of what
Yeah.
is valuable in other places that people are unfamiliar with. And everybody would go, "Well, yeah, Indiana, it's just a flyover state." And because we've lost the investment into rural and small town communities over the last 20 years, we are here because of that lack of investment, right?
Mhm.
And and on many, many levels. And so to me, it's like reclaiming our voice and then shining it to the nation. We actually have national partners that are reaching to us going, "We love this idea. We want to actually take it." Can you imagine? Like, this is something when I tell people, you need to follow how many Supreme Court decisions start in Indiana. You need to
Mm.
follow how many pieces of legislation actually get presented from, say, ALEC or Heritage into Indiana. How many things
Mhm.
start here in Indiana that affect the nation in a negative way? What if our summer of solidarity is like, it's gonna start here and we're gonna share that with the nation? And that just gives me goosebumps because to me, that's that little bit of rebellion going, "You said I was a flyover state. Well, I'm gonna prove you."
It's coming together and like this beauty of mess and chaos. Like in my backyard right now, my wife and I have a couple of bird feeders, right? And they're filled with black sunflower seeds. And all the different birds, the blue jays and the cardinals and the finches and the orioles and the bluebirds and the blackbirds and the grackles and all of them, they all amidst all their differences, they come together at the same spot. They break bread or they, crack shell as it were, and they leave a mess on the ground. And later in the summer, we get sunflowers.
Mm,
And it's kind of that, right? Like that's
yeah,
what this is.
yeah,
We're coming together. We're planting seeds, and it might be messy right now, but those seeds we plant are going to grow into this beautiful thing later.
And the other thing, just build on that metaphor, because we have the same thing in our backyard. We've got two of them, and so it makes a frickin' mess, and it kills some of the perennials because all those seeds are dropping. But guess who knows that? There is social proof in my backyard that we have a bird feeder. But the chipmunks and the squirrels are like having a feast on the ground. And I swear to God, they are communicating to one another because it just keeps getting more and more, you know, birds and rabbits now have figured it out. So there is the other thing that we know is that through the metaphor, through the planting the seeds, through the sunflowers on the garages and the fences and the flags that are showing up with sunflower bows and that kind of thing, it's the social proof that we need, that people need to begin to look around to say there is something happening that's not MAGA, right? And so we know that that also is very important in a pro-democracy movement. There has to be social proof that people are not at home covering their heads in fear, shaking in their boots, but that people are stepping out and creating something together. And if I look around, and that was what was scaring me so much in January, February, there was no proof that anybody cared about
yeah,
anything. And it's like, and that was frightening to me, more frightening than what was going on in Washington. So that it's the social proof that's happening as well. And you're right, Scott, it's messy and it's organic, and no one of us have any one answer, and we haven't figured it out. But it will evolve over time as we continue to build connections like with you, with social media folks, with influencers, and with these different amazing organizations to say, hey, just join us, and let's see what we can make together over these next 3 months.
Beautiful. Michelle, we've only got a minute or so left here. I'm going to go ahead and give you the last word.
yeah. Um, I just again echoing everything that everybody said. We have to give people a reason to hope. Um, yes, America has, just like humans, we have shadows. And I think we're at a stage right now where when we're talking with people, there is some very real anger. There's really hurt. There's fear. There's all of these emotions. And part of being human is being able to sit in that with somebody. And I feel like we've had so many conversations where we either talk past each other or we talk at each other, but we need a season of talking with each other because whether we like it or not, we are going through this next phase together. And I would far more be with neighbors and people going, we're going to figure out how to do this and build a bigger table. We talked, there's an old story called Stone Soup where
Oh
s-
my God, we did stone soup when I was in third grade.
yeah,
Yes.
so you
Yep.
have soldiers go into a village and they're very hungry and the village is like slamming doors. We don't have anything, zero hospitality. And they just talk amongst themselves and say, you know what I really want is stone soup. And somebody says, well, what is stone soup? Oh, it's super easy. We just get one big stone and some water. And they're like, well, okay, we can do that, but where do you put it in? Well, shoot, we don't have a big pot cauldron. And somebody goes, well, I've got a cauldron. Okay, let's do that. They put water in, they put the stone in, and they keep talking. It'd be really nice if we had, I don't know, some onions. That's what we had the other place. And somebody goes, I have onions. And pretty soon they bring in the carrots and the potatoes and whatever. And by the end of it, somebody's like, well, I've got bread and I've got salad and let's put a table. And they have this giant feast. But the story starts from a place of fear and mistrust. And there's a clever subversiveness. and a simplicity of all we just need is a stone and some water. And I feel like we're in this moment now where all we need is a sunflower. That's all we need.
Love it. We will leave it there. Michelle Higgs, Debbie Asberry, Amy Courtney dropped off, left us, but thanks to her as well. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate all you ladies do, and I can't wait to have to enjoy this summer in solidarity with you. Once again, that was Debbie Asberry of Hoosiers for Democracy, Amy Courtney from Mad Voters, and Michelle Higgs of Indiana Rural Summit, organizers of Summer of Solidarity. Please join us this summer in having those important conversations, building trust, empathy, and connection with others. No labels, just person to person. We will only come out whole on the other side of this if we do it together. Sunday morning, I'll be back with an all-new panel of guests on Who's Left This Week. That airs live at 10:30 a.m. on the Project Next Media Network, YouTube, Facebook, Live, and Twitch. Links for those are in the show notes. It's a lot of fun if you haven't had a chance to check us out yet. I bring together panelists from the Democratic Socialist left to never-Trump conservatives, and we look at the week's headlines from around Indiana and beyond. We'll also dive into one big topic and throw in a few jokes for good measure. Hope to see you there in the comments, but feel free to reach out before then. My email is scott@whosleft.us. Thanks again to Amy, Debbie, and Michelle. Learn more about Summer of Solidarity at organizingindiana.org. Please consider visiting the site and donating through their ActBlue. And if you're still feeling generous after that, my website is whosleft.us, where you'll find every episode and article we've ever published. I'd greatly appreciate a paid subscription there. I'm also on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok at Who's Left, or on most other social media sites at ScottRodge78, where you can hit me up with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns. Please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.